We are in Wabasha, Minnesota. Katie and I, we love the movie Grumpy Old Men, and you know, I have vlogged Grumpy Old Men when I came to Minnesota before, but I'll be danged if none of it was filmed in Wabasha, where the actual town that they live in the movie is. But I wanted to show you this because I always wanted to come and check it out, and this little motel right here has something kind of cool dedicated to the movie. You notice right in the entrance they have a couple of painted benches. The painted benches are Max Goldman and John Gustafson from the movie. Gotta love it. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. And then down here on this side, same deal, but a little bit different. Little different expressions. In fact, this one's a little bit better. How much do you love it, Katie?
Oh, these are great.
We're stopping off for a little homage to the movie. So yes, we are in St. Paul, Minnesota today, where Grumpier Old Men. I've already done Grumpy Old Men, so if you want to see that, I'm going to put a link right here. But today we are back for the sequel, Grumpier Old Men. We're going to show you as many of the spots as we can because this is just such a classic movie, and I think pretty much everybody in my generation loves it. So, Daze with Jordan the Lion and the beautiful Katie, it begins right now. So this was the sequel to the first, which we, mentioned we loved, but it was a different director and
Yes, it was.
an additional cast member, the great Sophia Loren. So
yes, absolutely.
Why did they change up the directors, Katie?
Well, they invited the first director to come back, but ultimately the first Grumpy Old Men was kind of seen as a flop. So it was actually Walter Matthau who introduced Howard Deutsch, the director of Grumpier Old Men, and John Hughes, because John Hughes and Walter Matthau had worked together filming the movie Dennis the Menace. And Howard Deutsch came highly recommended after doing movies like The Great Outdoors, and the rest is history.
So Max lived right over here, and John lived right over here.
Fun, rascal you. I'm gonna kill you just for fun.
Now we would always see Max's car right here and eventually his boat, and I love this because you can see this tree in the movie, this movie especially, and this tree, because at the beginning of the movie they're getting along and both of them are coming out of their front doors to go fishing for the day.
Where are they biting? Pop says that he spotted catfish hunter down at Indian Slough.
And they take off, hop in their cars and everything, but
Catfish hunter! Maybe this is the year we catch him.
as we see it later, we see Max coming out here because he has a date. He's actually got a date with Maria. So he and John are walking out of his front door.
Oh boy. Hey, I'm a little nervous.
Oh, come on.
And walking down,
You just be yourself, you'll be fine.
and that's when John's telling him just to be himself, and Max says he has a pickup line that he's gonna run on her.
Compliment her on how great she looks.
Okay, already got that covered.
And they're right here when they start talking about it. John is right in front of this tree, so Katie, come over here. I'll be where Max is, and he delivers that amazing line. Do you remember what he says he's gonna say to her?
I'm afraid I'm not going to say it right just like him, but I think it's something like,
There may be lots of fish in the sea, but you're the only one I would like to mount over my fireplace.
there's many fish in the sea, Maria, but you're the only one I want to take and mount over my
Fireplace.
That's not bad.
You notice the sexual innuendo?
I did.
Notice the sexual innuendo in there? He says,
I saw that on Geraldo.
yeah, that's how you get people to do what you want them to do without them knowing. But after, when they start fighting and everything, we see a great scene of John and Max out here sword fighting with their fishing poles. And they're right in front of this tree. And there used to be like a little makeshift kind of like fence here in the divider of their properties.
That mangy animal's been crapping on my paper for years.
But ugly.
And you can see that while they're sword fighting, and that's when Ariel, who through most of the movie we've seen her up here working on the beautiful flowers that she has, we see her walking out and they both stop to see what she's doing, and she says, "I'm going home. You can call me when you guys have settled this."
Ariel.
Home, and you can call me when the stupid war is over.
Because over here is actually her house. And in the movie, she's not living there because she married John 6 months before. But in the movie, it's actually Melanie and Jacob, who are going to get married, are living there with their daughter and apparently Grandpa, because Grandpa's in the breakfast scenes and the tucking their kid in at night scenes. So he's telling her that insane Goldilocks story. And there where he says Goldilocks got a Remington semi-automatic and that was the end of the 3 bears. So we see this a few times, just mainly from the exterior, and then when Ann-Margret goes to walk inside the house, but it's a lot in the first movie. So there's also a great scene that happens right over here, and it's after Max comes walking out of this door. He comes out of here with his trash and he's dancing to Saturday Night Fever. And he's doing this great little jig up and down the sidewalk as he's coming out to throw his trash away, which is right here. When he comes out, John sees him. He says, "I don't believe it." He says, Max says, "I am the Lothario of love." He says, "Was it a hold up or a stick up?" And then when they go to leave, they're walking out this way and you can see them coming towards us.
I think I liked you better before you were getting any.
And that's when John says, "I think I liked you better when you weren't getting any." So I love it. But we also have some great moments here because since Max parks his car right here when they're feuding, this is where John goes and puts their cat, Slick, inside the car and tells him to work his magic. So when Max comes out here, he finds that Slick has completely torn up his new upholstery. So we have a scene of Max coming out here, opening his door right there, and he sees his newspaper sitting out here and Slick has crapped on it.
Good morning, Slick. What a nice kitty cat. Yes, you are. And I see you've crapped on my newspaper again.
So Max had went and got himself this vicious dog named Lucky. And we're gonna show you where he gets Lucky, but he ends up sicking Lucky on Slick right there.
Kill Slick!
That is the same door though. That's the same everything. The same door, the same front steps, the same railings and everything that we see in the movie, same walkway. It's great because when I was here before, it was winter time, I believe, and so we can really see everything now. I believe they repainted John's house since the movie and everything, but it is still here now. Great story. The guy who wrote the movie, he actually grew up on this street and he wrote the story about him and his dad's fishing experiences growing up. And so his dad was named John and lived in this house and he was a veteran. So he told the production, like, "I really want you to film it in my dad's house. I really want you to use my dad's house so it's like immortalized forever." And so they kind of secured most of the neighborhood for the movie, but his dad wasn't keen on it. And they said finally it was the other neighbors talked him into it, and also offered to put a new roof on his house and to put all the flowers and everything. So he got a little bit out of it since they were gonna layer the whole place with snow and everything. He lived here for a long time, but he's since passed and it's in new hands of new owners. But there is the memorable scenes that we see. Like I said, my favorite is the fencing scene out here with the fishing poles. I love that. This movie was so great. So it's so cool to see where they both would have parked their cars. So you'll see right here is where John always parked his car. Max's car was right here, so when they take off, they actually go that way. So I think this is the mystery of Rigetti's. I have been looking for years, and one of the reasons I never wanted to do this was because you could never really pinpoint where Rigetti's was. But Katie and I think we found it. Found an article that talked about it being built on Bass Lake. Now what I was able to find was about 10 years ago, someone came out here, and if you watch in the turnaround shots, whenever anybody drives into Rigetti's, there was like a red barn or a red shed, and it had like a big rectangular archway that you could drive a car under. And right here, about 10 years ago, that thing still existed. So where this pile of stuff is right over here that you can see, that's where the barn was, and the archway was right here, which means the path to Rigetti's would have been straight through here. So the dock would have been directly in front of us, and Rigetti's would have been just to the left, connected to the dock right there where the water is.
You're the only one, but you're...
So they actually built that for the movie and then tore it down after the movie on private property. I would love to walk over there. I have already tried knocking on doors of the residents across the street from here. Nobody's home, but they have very definitive no trespassing signs everywhere. So I don't want to, but ideally that barn would have been right here, and Max and John, they would have all driven right in through there. When Dad dies, when Burgess Meredith dies, they have his ceremony right out there at the water. That's where they all dock their boats. We looked at an overhead map on Google Maps, and it definitely looks like it's laid out and everything to make sense to where that could be, but without trespassing, we really can't do much, unfortunately. So this is the lake that we see in the beginning of the movie. John and Max are out here arguing and battling on, even though they get along now. And then we see when Max is falling in love with Maria, he's out on his boat out here singing Maria from West Side Story, and then he runs into Maria, actually in her boat out here.
Maria, oh Maria, oh Maria, Nay, I didn't know you were a fisherman. Holy moly!
But then we see it again at the end of the movie, because at the end of the movie they have run into Sven. They're actually supposed to be headed to the wedding, and as they're driving they run into Sven. It was actually out here on this road that they run into Sven.
Hey, Sven! Ronnie, you look like you've seen a ghost. Biggest fish I ever seen.
And Sven tells him that he saw Catfish Hunter, and that Catfish Hunter had bit his pole in half.
He smiled.
Smiled?
See?
And then he bit the pole in half.
Holy
And that's when Max says, we gotta give it a try. My boat is parked not more than 100 yards from here. And John's saying, no, we gotta go to a wedding. We can't be doing this. He goes, Max says, weddings never start on time. So they're out here trying to get catfish. They've been chasing this catfish hunter for 20 years. They finally catch it out here on the water. They're racing all over. They're both in the boat, standing up, going back and forth, trying to catch this fish.
Just sit there for a minute and shut up, moron. Touch.
Holy jeez.
Maybe it's something from outer space. Keep the tip up.
The tip is up.
And they finally catch it, and they realize that they need to put it back because Dad, played by Burgess Meredith, had chased that fish his whole life for like 20 years. The last 20 years, it was his sole mission to be out there to capture catfish hunter. And since he never did, John says catfish belongs in the sea with Pop. So they release him and then head off to the wedding, which is where we're gonna eventually take you to, and you will get to see where they race off to and everything, and that is in the Marine on St. Croix. So again, it was on this water where they filmed the scenes with the couch. Very well could have been right over there because you do see a hill behind them on the couch. It could have very well been right there.
Hey, Pop. Shush. Huh? He's here. What, catfish hunter? He's by the sandbar.
I was really hoping to match up the trees and get over there, but you know, when I see no trespassing signs, this day and age you gotta follow them. So in both movies, Sam and Max always escape off to Slippery's, and in both movies this was the exterior to Slippery's, but the interior in both movies was different. So we do see this when Sophia Loren goes to try and woo Max. When she's exiting, she comes out of this door right here, and Ann-Margret, who plays Ariel, is actually right here, kind of stops her and starts introducing herself.
Maria? Maria Raghetti. How do you know who I am?
And saying that she realizes what it's like to be the new kid on the block, and just basically tries to make her feel welcome. And Sophia Loren, Maria, is kind of embarrassed by the way she's dressed. She says she's dressed like a slut because she was here basically trying to woo Max. So we'll take you over to where they film the interiors, which is actually just right up the street. So the interiors for Slippery's was actually Mayslacks, which apparently is known for their famous roast beef sandwich. Let's go on in and see if we can match up anything. So this is the entrance that Sophia Loren, Maria Raghetti, comes walking in. Right there, the music hits, and she comes walking in towards us, and we get a shot from right there of the bartender. And Max and John were sitting right down here. So she ends up walking down here to these seats.
Holy moly.
And she says, is this seat taken? And starts saying, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Can't we be friends?
The devil is a beautiful lady in a red dress.
They kind of have that conversation right here. John's on the other side of Max, saying the devil is a temptress in a red dress. So he eventually, as they're talking, comes to his senses and says he'll never agree to the restaurant.
You are a starber man. Raghetti's will be a very great success. You shall see.
Not in my lifetime!
And she ends up storming off. But then we see John's wife, Ann-Margret, comes in here, right, Katie?
Yes.
And we actually get a cool shot kind of from behind the barn. You can see all this right here when Ann-margret's basically telling them that they need to be a little nicer to Maria.
Well, you two must be very happy with yourselves. I just ran into Maria and she's in tears.
And they need to just accept that their fishing spot is gone. So we'll put some of the clips from the movie in here to show you.
She thinks that everybody hates her.
She's right.
John, I want you to go right down to Rigetti's and apologize.
But wow, this is so cool to see. The booths and everything look very similar. And they would have been sitting pretty much right about here. And Maria, when she leaves, she goes right out that door.
You evil temptress!
And then they cut to the 331 Club that we already showed you. She walks out of the exterior of that building. So we've made it over to Cooper's Foods. Even 30 years after the movie, it's still Cooper's Foods. Unfortunately, it's closed. But all of the filming that we saw was basically right along the inside of this wall. So I think from the front of the glass, we can kind of show you some of the great scenes that happened here. So this is perfect. When we see this, this is when John and his dad are in here shopping and they run into Maria and her mother.
Pop, I wish you'd try the low-fat bacon.
Well, you can wish in one hand and crap in the other and see which gets filled first.
The scene, you can actually see the doors just to the left of us in the background of all the shots. But Dad, played by Burgess Meredith, comes up and throws the bacon right here in the cart right there, and then moseys over to this section, which is where all the produce was, and that's where he meets Mrs. Rigetti.
Pick me up a pack of camels. All right, you got it. Hey, you need a hand with that? Huh? My name's Gustafson.
He's, oh, an Italian girl, huh? He does that goofy laugh and says, why don't you come to my house and I'll show you my cannelloni. Starts doing all those funny jokes right there.
Italian girl. What do you say we go back to my place? I'll show you my cannelloni. Ooh.
It's okay, I'm a doctor. All those scenes were right there. Now they have painted the walls since, because we were looking at photos online and when this was at Cooper Foods, you could still see the diamonds painted up there on the walls and where it said bakery and everything when it's behind Maria's head.
Hi, Chris.
How you doing?
Fine.
Ox.
Nag.
Hey, moron.
But you can see now that they're doing some sort of renovation, turning it into something else, but this was definitely some of the best scenes of the movie right here. So in the movie, this is where Melanie and Jacob come to check out their wedding cake at the Tashita Bakery. Sadly, no longer a bakery. It is a, looks like an out-of-business shoe store, but you can see the door matches up. They would have had the open sign right over here, and it really just cuts to the inside of the bakery, where the woman who's making the cake says it's going to be a 3-tiered cake, and she says that John had an idea, and they both look at each other and they're like, oh boy, John has kind of a unique idea. Katie, do you remember what his idea was?
Well, they end up putting the bride on the top with a fishing line and the groom on the bottom, and it says
with a hook around the groom's neck.
Melanie's landed herself another husband.
Yeah, you gotta love it. One of the signs that the having the dads involved is maybe not the greatest idea, and that they're not really enjoying the dads being part of it.
If you look closely, it still said Tashita's Bakery on the awning. See it?
Oh yeah, yeah, right there. Look at that. She's absolutely right. If they brought that down, you can see the name of the bakery is still there. Great eyes, Katie. Now it actually looks like it's a thrift store. See a lot of clothes and stuff in there. But you can actually see the post is in the background of Daryl Hannah when they would have been basically right in this area. They're seen when they're looking at the cake and everything. But you can see this little post over Daryl Hannah's shoulder. And it has like a safety code certificate type thing.
Melanie has landed herself another husband.
But yeah, that's where that all would have happened when they're looking at that cake. Not only is Katie right that that's the awning that is pulled down that you can see in the movie, but that's the same sign. They've just replaced it, but that's the original sign that would have been up there with the bakery. We just replaced it with the shoe sign. All right, now we're in the town of Stillwater, and we actually see that bridge in the background of our next scene. Oktoberfest. So it's actually right here on the water where they had the Oktoberfest. Jacob and Melanie come up here. You can tell because they have the handrail right here. There used to be one right here as well. And when they come up, you can see the corner of this flagpole. But actually, it was right on the grass just beyond us, behind Katie. This is where they did the whole Oktoberfest with Handsome Hans. And that's where everything kind of comes to a crux. If you remember, that's when Melanie and Jacob find out that Hans is the entertainment for their wedding, and they kind of start arguing about it, and then Melanie says she's not sure if she wants to get married. And Jacob is saying, if you're not sure, you gotta tell me. And she says, I'm not sure. And he says, I've been waiting since 2nd grade to marry you.
Melanie, I know that I want to get married, but if you're not sure, you gotta tell me.
I'm just not sure.
And she just tells him she wants to wait a little bit longer. And she says she loves him. And he says, yeah, just not enough to marry. And they end up having their argument right back over here.
Jacob, I know what I'm talking about.
Really? If you're such an expert, how come you're the one that's been divorced?
And Jacob ends up storming off, going towards the bridge over here. And then Max and John are here arguing. That's when Max says, Jacob didn't say anything that wasn't true.
Well, maybe she just can't handle the truth.
Oh, she can't? What is the truth, Max?
The truth is that her first marriage was a flop.
Well, that was Mike's fault, and you know that.
He said, well, she couldn't keep Mike happy. How's she gonna keep Jacob happy? So then they end up basically restarting up their old fight that they had throughout the whole first movie. Now they say the gloves are off.
The wedding is off, and the friendship is off. And the gloves are off.
And they ensue with their big battle, and you can tell it was right here because when they're arguing, you can see the lamp pole over Max's shoulder.
What happened? I'll tell you what happened. Your daughter got cold feet.
Oh, cold feet, my ass. Your son insulted her.
But it was right here. And if you look even a little downriver, you can see all the river boats that they actually had in the shot. So probably what they did was, because they look so good, they probably paid the river boats to come up here and park right here on the water just for the movie. But yeah, look at this. This is definitely enough land that they could have done the Oktoberfest here and laid it all out. They would have built that tent and everything. Well, here we are at the defunct St. Paul Sears store, and it was in the movie. Look at that. You can still see where they've painted over the Sears right there. So the Sears moment is hilarious. This is we kind of get a prelude to it earlier in the movie when Ariel is making her model of John. She's making a sculpture of John. He's sitting there naked, and Max sets his video camera up across from the window and is filming it. And when they start to feud again, Max follows John here to the TV department, and there's, if you remember the old Sears, there were just tons and tons of TVs all set up showing VCRs and everything.
Okay, how are you?
Is it for you?
Yep, that'll do it.
And while John's walking through the department, Katie, what happens?
Well, I think probably one of the best lines of the movie. You broadcasted my naked ass to half of Wabasha, despite the fact we are actually in the heart of St. Paul right now.
Yeah, Max puts the video up inside, and everybody that's shopping in the electronics department sees a half-naked John having a sculpture made of him and starts laughing. All you see is John looking around. He yells, "Max!" You see Max just pop up with a big grin on his face and starts waving. Too bad all the Sears are gone. We would have loved to have gone in there and tried to match it up, show you some of it, but unfortunately they went out of business a couple of years ago. So all we can show you really is just the boarded up entrance of what was. We went around the whole building. Everything is completely boarded up. Now we're over at the Animal Humane Society in Woodbury, Minnesota. This is where Max gets Lucky. This is where Max ends up adopting Lucky to combat Slick. He comes in, he sees Lucky, and he goes, "What about this one? One eye, no nuts?" And the lady goes, "Oh, Mr. Goldman, you don't want Lucky." Lucky growls and he goes, "I'll take him."
What about this one?
This one?
Yes, one eye. No nuts?
Oh, you mean Lucky.
Here, Lucky.
So he ends up adopting him here. So we get a shot of them driving right through here. They're racing to the church, and John's just driving like a freaking maniac, swerving around and going over everything. And we see him go past this and past this general store and shoot right down through there. Which I love. You can see all these old buildings in the shot when they're going by, because it's cutting back and forth from them driving to what's going on in the church. And the church that we're going to go to is right up this hill. So you do see John take a wild swerve right in front of this general store. So it's noted as one of the filming locations. And then they just go straight up that way. So here we are at Christ Lutheran Church for the big wedding. We get a shot like this where they're showing that it's the Wabasha Community Church. There used to be a tree right over here. So we get this shot and we see Kevin Pollak, Jacob, out here standing, waiting for Max and John.
He better be dead. That's the only excuse I'm taking right now. You're right, it's not an important day. No reason to be here.
And who are late for the wedding. Because we think it's Jacob and Melanie's wedding actually, but it's not. So speaking of weddings, we're showing up at the end of the night and they are just wrapping up a wedding. But we see this front. Actually, they focus in on the bell that's up there at one point. But for most of it, we see Jacob up here welcoming everyone to the wedding. So we get a lot of shots of that first door open, and Jacob would basically be right there welcoming people. Then when Max and John show up, unfortunately we can't get in there, but I'll show you some shots from the wedding to show you what the interiors look like. They go in there and we realize that it's actually Max and Maria's wedding. And John goes to pull the ring out and pulls a fish out, so jig is up.
Wait! Hold it! We're here! We're here!
Wait, we're here!
We're here, wait!
But then once the wedding wraps up, everybody comes out here and Max is hugging Ariel and John's hugging Maria. And we get a great shot of John and Max right here with this in the background. And it's when Max is saying, "Thanks for looking after Lucky for me, Gustafson." He says, "Oh, don't worry, Max, you'll see him before you know it."
Be sure to watch Lucky for us. I'm gonna miss that ugly mug of his.
Don't worry, Max, you're gonna see him before you know it.
I'm gonna miss your ugly mug, too.
God bless you.
And they all kind of crowd out and everybody says goodbye. And then they go out to the car that's waiting out here. Maria and Max are in there kissing, and all of a sudden they smell something and they realize that Lucky is in there with them. God love him. So this is the end. This is the end. This is where Max and Maria have their happy ending. Happily ever after. And they get married in this church. This is not the same church from the first movie that John and Ariel get married in. That one was in Lindstrom. This is in Marine on St. Croix. So they do eventually make it to the wedding. All right, I want to thank Barry B., Craig Perry, and Cindy Britton for becoming my newest Patreons and helping to support the travels and all the vlogs. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this vlog. I know I did. Katie, how about you?
It was a lot of fun to see all these locations, and it's such a great movie.
Yeah, it was rated poorly when it came out, but it's a cult classic now, both of them are. And Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau didn't necessarily want to make a cult movie when they made the first one, but they wanted to work together. So I'm glad they did, because they got two really great movies out of it. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great night, and goodbye.